Hey guys, so in this video, I'm going to create a video about things that I've, or the process of me building a capacity for me to apply for analyst roles. So as for my past videos, I was actually trying to learn how to speak in Spanish. However, it seems that how to speak in Spanish is a skill that can be difficult to learn for me, especially since I live in the Philippines and I don't have a lot of people to talk with. And the only thing or the only person that I can actually converse with is either through AI or use a learning method of a new language called uh input uh I'm sorry, com I think it was called comprehensible input or input comprensible. I forgot, but anyway, that's the only way that I can learn how to speak in Spanish since I don't live in a country that speaks Spanish. However, I think that I'm going to continue how to learn speaking in Spanish, but not in a way where I'm going to build a career out of it. So with that, I'm gonna think of it as I'm trying to learn how to speak in Spanish as a multiplier of the skills that I currently have. So as of now, this is going to be my first day of sharing to you the things that I have learned from how to, well, basically, this is a process of me stacking skills for me to get an analyst job, and hopefully, I can use this so that I can have a leverage that I am not just trying to say stuff, I'm actually learning stuff. And this is also a way for me to track my progress since I have actually created a Google Sheet out of this called Capacity Building. And I've learned this from Alex Hermosi, where if you want to know, this is basically a way for you to know if you have a progress, and that progress is basically the thing that is going to make you motivated. So when you see your progress, you'd be able to know what you currently lack and what have you learned so far. And I'm trying to use that, and with that, I'm trying to use this video also to showcase if I truly understand the concept of the things that I have been learning. And I guess it's also a way for me to know if I truly understand it, since if I can't explain it very well, then I guess that's an opportunity for me that I still don't understand it deeply in a way that I can explain it to a 5-year-old. But anyway, that's it for me. I'm going to share the three things that I've learned so far from solving SQL problems. So I have actually already studied before this on how to use SQL, but this is like my first day of trying to solve real SQL problems. So with that, I have found a site called um, coders.sh. So they basically have 25 set of SQL problems, and now I tried to solve three. One was easy, medium, and hard. So these are basically the three things that I've learned. So number one, I am fully aware that I understand how this select and basic filtering works. So basically, when you filter things on SQL, you can use the where clause. So this is basically where you put a condition on what values would you want to be returned. And I have demonstrated this on the problem called the Ghost of 2020, where basically the problem was they needed to have, or they wanted to know who's the champion on the tournament on, I think that was FIFA. I don't recall, but I was able to solve that pretty easily. Now, the second problem was called Git Blame Detective. So this is the part where I had a challenge, mainly because I needed to use the join function, and I think I only learned how to use join function yesterday, and I haven't really applied it to solve a problem, though I have used it to filter some data, but in terms of using it to find an answer out of the data, I haven't really been able to use it. So with that, I tried to use it. Um, well, actually, the join function is from the skimming insert. So it's one of the hard question. So from the join function, I needed to learn that I needed to have a mental framework to solve problems. Mainly because when I was trying to solve the problem, I did not really have a framework that I can use on. So I did not know where to start, how could I finish it, what should I look for in every data. So with that, I tried to use Copilot to know, or at least to try to have a baseline on what should I check in order for me to know, or in order for me to get an idea on what should I need to know, or what do I need to know in order for me to get the results that I needed. And with that, I have learned that, well, at least the Copilot shared that I can use six. So first one is I needed to read the problem as a story. And what this do is basically it helps you imagine how the data work. I don't think data is a word, but how the data works. And with that, you can also leverage this so that once you present the data to maybe stakeholders or the executives, you can explain it better so that they would have a better um, business decision based on the data that you are showing. Number two of the second step of the framework is to uh, identify the tables and the relationship. So basically, this is knowing what's the primary and the foreign key of each table and how they are connected, so that once you use the join function, you'll know what to pull up and where to pull up the data. Number three, or the third step of the framework, is to choose the right join. Now, basically, yesterday I learned that there are three type of joins. So one is inner join, second is outer join, and lastly is the self join. Inner join is basically trying to find a match of the value of the first table to the second table. Right join and left join is basically just trying to find values that are similar from the left table to the right table, and self join is basically just trying to find um, values that are similar to the same table. So they actually have different use cases, but for this specific problem called the skimming intern, I needed to use the inner join, mainly because uh, I needed to find an exact match on who was the or what was the or yeah what was the specific index ID that has a discrepancy on it. So I also needed to use aggregate function so that I can sum up all the values and then check out the discrepancy based on the data. So yeah, that's the reason why I needed to learn and strengthen my learning about joins. And then the fourth is to learn how to perform aggregate and filter functions. So this is basically knowing how to use the where and having function, so that you can aggregate the values depending on the business requirements, and you also needed to um, use to filter. So you can use the greater than, equal sign, less than sign. So those type of filters. And then number five, or the fifth step, is to write the code, or write the query, run the query, and then debug the query if it doesn't work, or let's say for example it doesn't match to the thing that you're looking for, then you should need to debug it. However, we have the sixth um, step, which is reflect. So since we already have AI right now, we can actually already screenshot the problem, paste it onto AI, and then we can have the problem. Now, we actually also ask this from AI in terms of, since we already have AI, what's the main difference if I can just, or what's the main difference if I can just copy the data from, let's say, for example, SQL and then paste it on Copilot? What's going to be the use case of the data analyst? Now, what I have learned is that the main difference is that though AI can solve the problems, the main difference is that AI doesn't know the initial business requirements, since it doesn't have the ability to critically think based on the factors that are existingly, or that are present. So with that's where data analysts come. And with that, um, since we already have the data, it would be much easier for the data analyst to get the queries. But in terms of thinking what queries to get, that's where the use case of the data analyst is. And lastly is the get blame detective. So this was the problem that I have mentioned earlier. So I have learned that there are actually two ways in order for you to get the value of date function. So what I have learned is that you can actually use date add functions, the three date functions, the date add, the function where you get the date in between, and then the date today. So, that you can use that. And then with this specific problem, I learned that you can actually use a function. I wouldn't say it's called a function in uh, SQL, but it's a function in SQL where you turn date object into a readable string. So it's called strftim. So it turns date object into a readable string so that you can just easily filter it. Now with this, I was able to learn that when you use this type of function, you can use percent %w and then use an operator sign, an equal, so that if it matches that specific date, let's say for example, in this problem, I needed to know who was the person who performed the commit on that specific day on this specific hour. And in order for me to get that date, I needed to use percent %w to get the specific date, or yeah, the specific date, and then 5 for Friday since it happened on Friday. And then I also needed to use percent %h to get the specific hour in which when did the problem happen. So based on the problem, it happened on 5 p.m. So I needed to use 1700s. Well, basically it's just 17 since uh they used the military time to get it. So I used and function, or yeah, the and operator to get all the conditions, and then to get all the data and return the person who performed the commit. And that's all the things that I've learned from SQL today. I'm going to polish the capacity building tracker that I have, so that once it's slightly beautiful, I'd say I would be able to share it along the journey if someone asks for it. But anyway, that's all the things that I've learned from SQL today. Have an amazing day.